I want to start this week with a story, a quick story. I was walking to the train the other morning, and I saw a vehicle was stalled in the intersection. And the driver got out, opened his car door, and he was trying to push his vehicle. He had one hand on the car door, one hand on the steering wheel, trying to get this car out of traffic, pretty big car. So nobody was helping him. Cars were honking, yelling. I went over to help him. And by the time I got there, another gentleman came, and we started pushing the vehicle, still slowly moving the vehicle. More and more people started coming over. By the time we got that vehicle out of the street, there was about 10 people helping. Some people just had one hand on it. They weren't even really putting a lot of effort. But it took all of us to get that vehicle out. And I thought about it because there's so many people that were backed up in traffic who wouldn't help. They were just yelling and complaining. And they were basically vulnerable because they could not move. So instead of getting out to help so they can move forward, they just sat there and yelled and complained. Now, when I think about this work, it takes all of us to get on board. Like, we have to get on now. We can't sit on the sidelines, as superintendent would say. We have to get in the game. So people ask, well, what has the mayor's office done? What are you guys doing? Let me tell you something that we're doing. We've invested in street outreach work, a proven strategy that's been replicated in Chicago, in other cities, in other countries. That's a proven strategy. It's been evaluated several times. We're deploying that in Chicago communities. Right now, the city is supporting that work in 13 communities. It's being supported by the state and county in additional communities as well. And we just put out an RFP, a request for proposals, that will be awarded this week. That brings on an additional 5 communities. So when you're asking about what we're putting out there, last year we put out $6 million. This year there's a total of about $25 million. So in addition, there's victim services work that we're putting out as well. So we know it's not enough. But let me tell you something. We want to succeed. TPD wants to succeed. Parks wants to succeed. Mental health services have been tripled. We want that to succeed. So when people are wondering like what we're doing, and we want to do a better job of getting this out so you understand, so people know that we're not just standing back and watching this violence happen, we're putting out proven strategies. And this is not just a Chicago issue. We've seen rises in major cities across the country that are struggling with this as well. But we're going to remain steadfast with our strategy. We're not going to stop. We want it to be sustained, and we're going to keep investing. But I do want to put it out there that we can't sit on the sidelines. You can't impact the game from the sideline. You have to be in the game. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Deputy Chief Navales. First, I want to start like I always start when I have this opportunity, is thank Superintendent Brown, thank his command staff for all the support they've given me and everything that we've tried to do here at Community Policing. I want to thank Norm and Street Outreach for everything you guys are doing out there. Every time we're out there, we run into your folks, and it's great to see what they're doing out there. Also, I want to take this time to thank the city services. This whole government approach has been something that has afforded us resources to accomplish a lot of the things that we needed to get done. And lastly, I want to thank every Chicago police officer that sacrifices and works long hours to ensure that the city and its residents are safe. Also, I want to thank the residents that participated this weekend citywide. We held approximately 35 community engagements across the city, and all the citizens that came out to make those a success deserve a thank you because they are getting involved. The engagements were geared to create relationships with people of all ages. I'm talking from young folks all the way up to the seniors and the citizens. Some of those examples were the PALS baseball skills camp that was held in West Pullman, the music in the park held for seniors at Cragen Park. So the Chicago Police Department, in keeping with its commitment to seniors and their families, hosted this music at the park engagement in the 25th District, where the CAPS officers created this engagement to include music, entertainment, and a raffle. What made this engagement special was that it was run by the youth that belonged to the CAPS office there in the 25th District. So we're empowering young folks to go out into the community and get mobilized, right, and help out members of their community and not just participate. The second was the Cops for Kids chess program, where CST and members of the counterterrorism holded a Marine unit, our Chicago Police Marine unit orientation and walkthrough, where they allowed the kids to step outside of what they're normally used to seeing and go out on a boat and see what it is to be a Marine officer here with the Chicago Police Department, right? Plant those seeds that help these young folks dream. So touching on the monthly numbers, and this is something the superintendent asked for me to do, and to do this monthly, the Chicago Police Department created and participated and partnered on numerous engagements. So we had in this month, the month of July, 143 youth engagements. We're talking folks under the age of 17, 64 individual senior engagements, 105 charitable giveaways. These are things such as food drives, clothes giveaways, giving out medical supplies for COVID. So our folks are out there and they're giving and they're making sure that people are fed and clothed. They met with 172 local businesses to engage them on how to be better neighbors. They participated with 77 faith-based institutions that also partnered with us to march on Operation Wake Ups and Operation Cleans. For the month of July, the Chicago Police Department not only participated, but co-created and created approximately 2,000 engagements. That's in 1 month. And the reason why I wanted to put that number out there is to let folks know that we are willing, we're out there, and we want to engage with you. In order for us to build relationships, we have to have that contact. And as my partner Glenn Brooks always says, you have to have a discussion, you have to participate, and you have to exchange information. But also, I think you have to allow yourself the opportunity to be vulnerable to each other's emotions. And when we get to that point, that's how we build those relationships. One other thing that I wanted to touch on for community engagement is that in the last 2 weeks, not only the superintendent, but every member of the command staff has participated in peace walks. The violence out there not only affects members of the community, and it affects them drastically and dramatically, but also it affects us as police officers. So to take part in these walks and in these marches is incredibly important because it shows us what it is that we're working towards and why ending violence is important. So we've done peace walks in Lawndale, Austin, Roseland, every exempt member with members of the community, and it's great to see. It's exactly how it should be. Last thing I want to do is invite everybody here, the media, members of the community, citizens, to come out to all the national nights out. Every district will be holding a national night out. This will be tomorrow, August the 3rd, 2021. They occur various times between the times of 2 to 6 o'clock. And what I ask you is to come out, get involved, get engaged, participate with us. We want you to come out here and we want to get connected with you. We want to get to know you on a personal level. We want to be able to help you if the need is there. But we also want to share that time with you and help reinstill faith in us. So to do so, I want you to reach out and connect with your local CAPS office. Contact your district coordinating officer. Get a hold of your area coordinator or call your CAPS community organizer. There's a plethora of ways of getting engaged. We want you to come out, get engaged, and let's do this together. Let's make this city better together. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm just going to go over a couple cases that occurred where we're going to be seeking some of the public's help to give us some information to help solve these horrific murders. On the 31st of July at 04:33 a.m. in the morning, so at 4:30 in the morning, at 2632 West 23rd Place, we had a victim, a male white Hispanic, 50 years old, who was driving to work, getting up early to drive to work that morning. And he was in the car with his son, and a bullet was fired on that block, which struck him, causing his death. So this occurred in Area 4, and the detectives don't have a lot of information right now. So we are seeking information from the community to help solve this extremely tragic case of an individual who's just going to work in the morning and then gets a bullet, put into their car, causing his death. We had another incident where we're looking for some assistance as well. This one occurred out in the 22nd District. It happened on the 29th of July, just after midnight, at 1632 West Wasika Place. We had a 14-year-old who was also in a vehicle when another car drove down the block, firing gunshots into that vehicle, striking that 14-year-old in the head, and he has died at this point. So once again, this one's out in the 22nd District, so Area 2 Detective Division. I know the superintendent constantly talks about the CPD tip line, cpdtip.com. So we're just looking for some information to help us with these pretty tragic cases at this time. And after that, I will pass it to the first.
Morning. I want to give just a brief overview of Lollapalooza. As you all know, it's a 4-day event festival that brings in acts from around the country and sometimes internationally. This year, Lollapalooza was organized a whole-of-government approach from the Art Institute, Millennium Parks, All City Services, and Live Nation, who now oversees Lollapalooza. Great collaboration amongst all, so I want to thank the entire planning staff for that. We put on a very nice event this year. Lollapalooza had an approximate attendance of 385,000 plus. Final figures aren't totally in, but we do know that is the minimum starting point. This year we had 19 total arrests at Lollapalooza. That was primarily for criminal trespass. I won't speak on the hospital runs that the fire did. They'll update on their own. But it was one of the safest Lollapaloozas that we've put on in recent years. No major incidents inside the park or outside the park. We did recover 120 plus cell phones from cell phone thefts. But overall, it was a pretty fair event. Sue?
Before we take questions, just want to highlight, obviously, the end of July crime numbers were put out by the department. And as you know, we're pretty flat on homicides for the year, slightly down for the month of July, and that will be the 4th consecutive month of being down on homicides. We are up 10% on shootings, and that's consistent with what occurred in June. So we didn't see any decrease in shootings from June to July. We stayed at plus 10% for the year, which is quite frustrating. And before I take questions, I also want to highlight the number of gun arrests that we've made and gun recoveries for the year. Gun recoveries for the year stand at 7,322, and gun arrests for the year stands at 3,477. The reason why we consistently highlight those two numbers, because number one, both gun arrests and gun recoveries are over, for gun recoveries, 28% higher than last year, and for gun arrest, we're 22% higher than last year. Gun recoveries and gun arrests are potentially lives saved. 90% of our violence is gun violence. Our homicides are 90% committed with a gun. We have an influx of guns in the city of Chicago that are in the wrong hands. And the precursors to the violence are illegal possession of guns, such that we are focused on recovering these guns and taking these guns out of the hands of repeat violent offenders. And our focus has yielded an historic pace of gun recoveries. We are on a pace to be above 12,000 guns recovered in this city, which would be an historic high, which you should not be running in place as far as homicides, and you should not be up 10% with the pace of the work that the men and women of the Chicago Police Department have done in recovering guns, which are 90% of what's happening as it relates to violence. And I also want to highlight one reason that I've repeatedly said. Too many guns in the wrong hands and too little consequences for repeat violent offenders. Torrance Reese is an example. He's 22 years old. Reese was identified as the offender who shot 3 victims during a narcotics deal in the 3900 block of West Albany on February 15, 2017. 2 of the victims died. Reese was also shot during the incident and was being treated by paramedics when responding officers heard a flash message for an individual matching his description that was seen on a pod camera, on video, fleeing the scene of the shooting in a vehicle and he was placed into custody. Reese was charged with 2 felony counts of murder and 1 felony count of attempted murder. I'm going to repeat that one. Reese was charged with 2 felony counts of murder and 1 felony count of attempted murder. While in the Cook County Jail, Reese was also charged with mob action and public indecency for incidents that occurred while he was detained in the jail. Reese was released on monitoring in June of this year. That's why we're running in place with the hard work, historic levels of gun recoveries and gun arrests. Too many violent repeat offenders are being released back into these communities, creating a sense of lawlessness and no consequences for their behavior, making for a dangerous environment. And with that, I'll take a few questions. Morning. Yes, so we try to look at the numbers from a lot of angles, and yes, you could compare to 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016. The better comparison is the current environment we're in as it relates to a global pandemic. Look at 2016, and that's how kind of we're looking at 2016's high, which was higher than 2017's by just a few homicides, and how the progressive decline occurred after 2016. 2017 was a little lower than 2016. 2017 was a little lower. 2019 was low. That's where you're getting to that point. But it started with a significant increase like we saw in 2020 that happened in 2016. So the full context of the numbers is not to compare 2021 to 2019. It's to look at the spike in homicides in 2016, just like 2020 occurred, and how we're declining. And being flat is not acceptable. In other words, 2021 compared to 2020 should have a similar feel that 2016 and 2017 had, if you look at the context of the numbers. And we don't see that. And what's different? A couple of things. Number one, we are recovering thousands of more guns than we did in 2016 and 2017 and 18 and 19. Thousands of more. I mean, 2020's gun recoveries were 11,300, which was a multi-year high. And the pace again this year, because it's the precursor to violence. Guns in the wrong hands, in violent repeat offenders' hands, drive violence. If it was 90% of the homicides occurred with a knife and stabbing, we would be focused on taking knives out of people's hands, right? But we're focused on what's driving the violence. And, you know, we're not judge, jailer, or juror. What we can do is focus on what we can focus on, which is taking, you know, the guns out of hands of repeat violent offenders and bringing them to justice for these victims. So, you know, 2019, 2021 is a comparison, but I think the full context is 2016, 2020 were 2 really high years of violence in Chicago. And the precipitous decline from 2016 to 2019, then the peak similar to 2016, and now we should be seeing a decline based on the work of the Chicago Police Department and their officers and all of the collaborations of the whole of government, You heard Deputy Chief Angel Navales talk about all of the community engagement. What he didn't say, that's an historic pace as well. We're engaging more people than we ever have from a community policing standpoint. We've taken a big swing at community policing with as we discussed in a big rollout of the many layers of touch points that we have with the community, seniors, young people, LGBTQ plus. We're taking a big swing at community policing. We're mandating every unit in this department for the first time has to do a community service project. That's never happened. The entire command staff has to walk up the blocks where we see significant violence. And yet, with all of that hard work by Chicago police officers and all of the collaborative city departments, as well as street outreach, violence interrupters, if you release Mr. Reese, who was charged with 2 murders and an attempt murder, and continue to commit crime while in jail, we're going to run in place as a city. We're going to do great work. We're going to do historic work. But we're going to be running in place, if not higher than 2020. We're one of the few big cities that's not higher than 2020. That really is the new normal for most major cities, is that they're much higher than 2020's high. The fact that we've done all this work, and it's not just anecdotal. These are real victims. These are people that were killed who have families that mourn their loss. And to see this man back in the neighborhood is it's madness. Quite frustrating for our officers, because every gun recovery, every gun arrest, officers put their lives on the line. As you know, we're at a high pace of officers being shot at or shot by these offenders, these very violent people who not only don't have any regard for their victims, nor do they have any respect for law enforcement. We had 36 officers shot at or shot this year, 9 being shot of that number. So your question is well taken. I just wanted to convey the full context of what we should be seeing, but for people like Mr. Reese being released back into the community after killing 2 people in a drug deal and attempting to kill a 3rd. Now he's back in the community. Of all times to do this, you know, he was arrested in 2017. Of all times to do this, when we're seeing a violent crime wave across this country, someone decides in the courts that Mr. Reese should be released. Yes. You know, we're about a week and a half into starting, so I would hold, because we're collaborating with our federal partners as well as training up all of the new officers that are going to be part of this team. We're excited about the effort. We're excited about the opportunity to maybe take some of the gun trafficking offenders into the federal system, which has significant more consequences than what happens at the county courts. Any other questions? Yes. By the way, good to see you here. Mm-hmm. So we have criminal trespass arrests. Those are people trying to get in free, trying to breach the fencing. I don't know that we have any other type of arrest to give you right now. We'll get that to you later. Yes, he was next. Yes.
Can I ask you about feel this?
Yeah.
Four-wheelers.
There is no way to do it. And it's why I highlight just murder. Because we can't get murder right in the court system. We can't get lower level crimes right. Right? We just get murder right. So the revolving door spins very quickly for traffic violations, if it moves at all. I mean, it's free flowing, people in and out. So there's not any consequence for traffic offenses. Our officers, like I always mention, given those realities, it's just amazing that the men and women of Chicago Police Department continue their hard work. It's amazing work by amazing people. You know, it's just it's frustrating to the officers to have this revolving door in our courts for any and all crimes, but especially murder. But yes, we focus on those offenders. We do what we can in citing and arresting them when appropriate. But it is the courts that don't, low-level crimes are just not a thing of any significant consequence in our courts. You make my point on violence. This idea that the offender's rights supersede the victim's rights, regardless of whether it's murder or, in the case you're bringing up, these people who just disrupt traffic and cause a lot of noise complaints all across the city, particularly in our neighborhoods downtown, but everywhere. It's really everywhere. We take enforcement action, and it's just no serious consequence. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you asked that question. And by the way, what media outlet are you with? The BZ, which is very aggressive in its coverage of CPD, by the way. And you should be adversarial to us. That's why I really support the adversarial nature of media to government. So if you keep that same energy, you just asked me that question, you would know that the county records are public records. They're public records, easily accessible by you. And yet we repeatedly try to cite other media outlets who've run these numbers, Chicago Tribune, and we haven't moved the needle with you to go and be adversarial to the courts by just going to open source county records to get all of this data that we get. It's not our data, it's the county courts data. That's open source public data for everything we talk about. And we ask you to sit in bond court. Sit in bond court. Just take a week, any week of the year, and sit in bond court Monday through Friday, and bring your pen and pad with you. Because the lead story should be the violent repeat offenders who are released back into these communities in our courts. I want you to be adversarial. I'm not saying that we can't provide the data to you, but I just want you to be the journalist I know you are in this regard as far as how to get the sources of information. And it's available to you. The county court records are available to you as media. Find this information, and you will find the numbers of murderers on EM. You will find the number of domestic batterers on EM. You will find the number of robbers and aggravated battery suspects on EM. Person after person after person is in that database that's readily available to you. Please use the database instead of using me as a third-party media outlet. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.